Welcome back to my random video of the week. I was scrolling Twitter as I do, and I came across this photo. This photo has brought back some memories from long ago. You see, when I first started playing solo queue, I had no idea what I was doing. But pretty quickly I learned I was going to be a controller most of the time. I mean, I was loading up a match and there was already a Jet and Arena insta-locking the moment the agent selection went live. But I was okay with it. I wasn't the best player when I started playing Valorant. So I figured, you know what, I'll fulfill whatever role I need to fill for now. And then once I get good, I will be the insta-locking duelist. To this day, that hasn't entirely happened. This photo brought back the memory of being yelled at by my entire team in one of my very first solo queue games. And you might be thinking, that sounds a little dramatic. Are you sure your whole team was popping off on you? Yes, they were. And I'll never forget, my top frag at the time looked at me and said, why are you even playing controller? Well, if you didn't insta-lock a duelist, maybe, I don't know, I would feel compelled to play another role. I remember after that match, I did what any other Valorant player would do. I locked in and I queued again. No. I actually did what a lot of people probably do. I went on YouTube and I looked up a smokes tutorial video. Did I learn much from the video? No, it was more so just to say that I had done something. Eventually, over time, through experience and through games, I just improved on my smoke placement. So this photo brought that all back. And the conversation right now is whether this smoke is good, whether it's bad. I think with any smoke, you can make the case that it can be good and bad. You just need a little bit of context. In my opinion, this is probably not the best smoke. However, it can be, given certain situations. What I've learned is that when people refer to the quote-unquote best smokes on whatever map it is, you really just have to pay attention to what the default smoke placement is. So somebody on offense, you know, hey, like that person has to swing out, so I'm just literally gonna hold right here. The moment that they swing, bam, if my crosshair placement is good, bam. This smoke is much further out. So instinctively you're thinking, okay, I have to watch here because if they're gonna swing out, this is where they're gonna pop out. But there's a flaw. The reason that these smokes are looked down upon is because of how many variables they introduce. Once you play enough games, you know the default smoke placements. But you also know that there are situations where your team might want to make an adjustment. Let's go back to bind and you're pushing up B long. Let's say your team wants to just get in, wants to only send in one person into plant. The best way to do that is to smoke off elbow like you normally would, but to then smoke where plant is. And then your team's plan is to send two people in, one to plant and one to hold down tube so that nobody can push into the smoke and kill the planter before they finish planting the spike. It's a very niche situation, but it can work, and that smoke placement can help achieve that plan. Similarly here, let's say you want somebody to push up onto heaven. This smoke is rather well because you can just, if you're a Jet, you can updraft right away onto heaven. You can hold from heaven while somebody else holds the smoke in case somebody does decide to swing out. And sure, you can make it work. But as I mentioned before, the smoke introduces a lot of variables. This smoke in particular allows for somebody to jump off of heaven. Probably not the smartest play, but they can do that. Simultaneously coordinate with their team and go, I'm gonna jump off heaven, distract the enemies while you swing off of the smoke. So now you have somebody swinging the smoke in a position that you're not typically used to holding, whereas your crosshair would be closer to Jenny, now it's further towards the center. Even that small adjustment can throw you off. And I know what you're thinking, but Mexx, what about the abilities piece? If we use the default smoke in this situation, where it's a little bit deeper and it covers less of heaven, but more so just is a barrier to get into heaven for the defensive team, there's only one or two things that the team can do. They can either just swing off the smoke, or they can use their abilities to get some of that space back. Phoenix can flash out of the smoke while the rest of the team pushes out. Of course, they don't have that much time to clear because the flash does not last that long, but it's still possible to do. But now you're dedicating resources to taking back this site. That's ultimately, as an offensive team, that's what you want to do. You want the defense to use as many of their abilities in a bad way. The more abilities, the more util you get out, the easier it is to rotate off site if you don't feel comfortable planting, or the easier it is to hold onto site after you've planted. Returning back to this photo encourages less of ability usage. It's still possible that Phoenix might swing out from the smoke with a flash. It's just in a really bad placement that abilities aren't as necessary, where a default smoke placement would encourage more util usage. You've introduced more variables for the enemy team to swing out of, and that's why a lot of people view this smoke as a bad smoke. So, is it a good smoke? Is it a bad smoke? In the eyes of everybody, it's a bad smoke. It can be good in certain situations, but by default, if you're playing a controller, more often than not, what you want to be doing is smoking the default areas of sight, unless you have a plan and you communicate that plan to your team. Because the reason I got yelled at from my smokes is because I had taken those smokes with my very little bit of knowledge and experience. I had taken those smokes off of previous games that I had played, and I hadn't realized at the time that these smokes were used within a 5-stack, within a team that we all collectively created a plan. It's a bad smoke because it creates too many variables. It could be good, and maybe you've used it correctly once or twice, but there's a lot of coordination required. That's kind of my rant for the week. I've kind of enjoyed this because I feel like whenever I bring up a point, people usually tend to comment their piece and their perspective on it. So if you have any comments, feel free to drop them down below. I will return next week with my next random video that I was working on. Peace out.